grind to the sun up. Who meant them talking on that side? What? Yeah. Who meant them talking on that side? Told man them shut up. Grind to the sun up. Grind. What? Who meant them talking on that side?
Yo, hey man, welcome back to HOODROK Entertainment. You tapped in with your boy Rock One. Bruh, we're touching down a little bit more Finnish, bruh. So yo, I tapped in with some Finland today. I think it was it? Yeah, I think it was. We tapped in with some Finnish rap today. But anyway, we're touching down with a little bit of Finnish history. So this is the animated history of Finland. I've already done like the geography now and stuff like that. So yo, go check that stuff out too, bro. Like there's a lot of history and geography and stuff on my channel. There's a whole bunch of sports, there's some comedy, and there's over 2,500 hip hop reactions. So yo, you tapped into that. So I click up, scroll up, tap, and whatever you want to call it. Go ahead and do that. You know what I'm doing, bro. You know what I'm doing. Re-rolling up. I got my hot chocolate here. I got the weed here. You know what I mean? We got some snacks here in case we get a little bit hungry. We prepared for the Holocaust up in here, bro. So, yo, let's get into this, bro. Run the numbers up on this video. Thanks for tapping in, bro. I appreciate all the support. Let's get it.
This video is sponsored by the Great Courses Plus. Stick around to see how you can support the channel and learn more online. So you guys have heard of Finland, right? The Arctic wonderland in northern Europe bordering Russia and Sweden. And Norway too, I guess. Sami, Vikings, the so-called White Death, Grand Duchies, which are like regular duchies, just better, Swedes, Soviets, and in between it all, the reindeer just minding their own business. Whatever you've heard of the Nordic nation, its story goes back pretty far.
It's a Nordic nation, but it's not a Scandinavian country, is it? Like Scandinavia, isn't there Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, right? But there are a lot of Nordic countries, but there's only 3 Scandinavian countries, isn't there? Yo, correct me if I'm wrong. You know what I mean? Yo, and shout out to White Death too. Jorge. Yo, savage sniper. I've never tapped in with any of these neither, so this would be good.
Finland is located right in the north of Europe, partly within the Arctic Circle. Most foreigners tend to mistakenly label the Finns as Scandinavian, which is only partly true since only the very top of the country.
He's touching on that. That's exactly what I was saying.
Finland is located right in the north of Europe, partly within the Arctic Circle. Most foreigners tend to mistakenly label the Finns as Scandinavian, which is only partly true since only the very top of the country is actually in Scandinavia. It would be more correct to use the term Nordic or Northern European, which encompasses the more broad cultural similarities they have with their neighbors.
Facts.
The region was inhabited mostly on the coast by a people that outsiders called the Fenni. The Finns called their land Suomi, which means land of lakes, which if you've ever been to Finland is pretty accurate. The Finns and the Sami are ethnically Uralic and speak languages in the Finno-Ugric family, meaning they are distinct from Caucasians. But then again, we don't really know, and theories on the subject are about as common as vodka. Things were pretty peachy for the Finns until they encountered a little-known Germanic group from southern Scandinavia, the Vikings. The Vikings raided along the Finnish and Baltic shores for many centuries, beginning the process of cultural influence that the Norse would have on Finland for almost its entire history. Norse people also arrived in Finland as traders and settlers.
So, although Norway's not a Scandinavian, although Finland is not a Scandinavian country, it was because of the Scandinavians that they inherited the Nordic culture, right?
Settlers, bringing with them culture, food, customs.
Run it back.
The Vikings raided along the Finnish and Baltic shores for many centuries, beginning the process of cultural influence that the Norse would have on Finland for almost its entire history. Norse people also arrived in Finland as traders and settlers, bringing with them culture, food, customs, and traditions. The Finns were never really united, but rather a group of small villages and farms with similar language and ancestry, so resistance was light at best. Norse settlement in Finland increased dramatically from the 9th to 12th centuries, mostly from modern-day Sweden and Denmark, which would begin the long-standing claim.
Hold on.
Resistance was light at best.
Hold on.
And traditions. The Finns were never really united, but rather a group of small villages and farms with similar language and ancestry, so resistance was light at best. Norse settlement.
So this is why, I'm guessing this is, it's only a guess too, so I'm guessing that this is probably why the Vikings never really had to conquer or take over Finland. Because there was never really anyone there to fight them, they were just farmers, so basically they just settled. They just settled and shared the land. Rather than having to turn up, fight a standing army, take over the fucking area, you know what I mean? Basically, the Finns had no problem with the Scandinavians like rolling up. Hey, what up, man? They start rolling. Oh, you got some of this? You got some of that? Well, we can swap you for some of this and some of that. Y'all can move in if you like. You know what I mean? I get it. You know, that's fire. That's fire.
Settlement in Finland increased dramatically from the 9th to 12th centuries, mostly from modern-day Sweden and Denmark, which would begin the long-standing claim of the Scandinavian powers on the Finnish lands. The Scandinavian powers fought for control over much of the Proto-Finnic lands, including parts of Estonia. To make things worse, even the Russians from Novgorod got involved from time to time. But before anyone knew what was going on, the medieval ages rolled around, and crusading was the hot new fashion. The Northern Crusades between 1150 and 1293 saw the Swedes conquer vast amounts of Finnic land, laying the foundation.
I take back everything I just said. Take back everything that I just said. They are warring it up. I get it.
Rolled around, and crusading was the hot new fashion. The Northern Crusades between 1150 and 1293 saw the Swedes conquer vast amounts of Finnic land, laying the foundations for the Swedish Empire. In addition to land and dominance, the expanding kingdom had a lot of symbolic significance for the Swedes, who had been struggling for many years against the Danes, their main rivals, who had a bit of a head start on the whole empire-building business. The Swedes brought with them the Swedish language and also lots of war. King Magnus Eriksson wasn't a fan of the Russians, and Finland often got caught up in the crossfire of the two nations' disputes. Not long after, Finland became part of the most powerful.
Finland been at war with Russia for a minute. Finland been at war with Russia for a minute. I didn't realize how historic the wars were between your nations up there. But yo, this is opening some eyes.
Empire building business. The Swedes brought with them the Swedish language and also lots of war. King Magnus Eriksson wasn't a fan of the Russians, and Finland often got caught up in the crossfire of the two nations' disputes. Not long after, Finland became part of the most powerful northern personal union you've never heard of, the Union of Kalmar, to try to counter
So basically, Sweden been at war with Russia for a minute, and Finland have been at war with Russia basically because they got caught in the crossfire between them two.
the monopoly on trade from another union you've never heard of, the Hanseatic League.
Oh, snap.
Princess Margaret of Denmark had her eyes set on the crowns of Sweden and Norway. And don't get us wrong, the royal families on these three countries were pretty intertwined by this point, and they mostly spoke the same language, so uniting them wasn't exactly the most far-fetched idea. She married the King of Sweden and succeeded as regent for her adopted son Eric, who became the King of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Who, by the way, just happened to be a duke from Poland. The union was signed.
What? Hold up.
Spoke the same language, so uniting them wasn't exactly the most far-fetched idea. She married the King of Sweden and succeeded as regent for her adopted son Eric, who became the King of Norway, Sweden, and Denmark.
So Eric become the man. He become that dude.
Denmark, who, by the way, just happened to be a duke from Poland. The union was signed in 1397 in the Swedish city of Kalmar, which gave the new country its name. Bonus points for creativity. The union was plagued by internal struggles and fighting with the Danes and Russians, much of the time in the Finnish mainland. The Livonian Wars of the 1500s was a turbulent time for Finland. Four major powers warred for control over more land, resulting in a large territorial expansion into northern Finland. The war also had internal struggles with
Poland snuck up in there. Because right up until now, all I've been hearing is, the Danes, the Swedes, the Finns, and the Russians.
large territorial expansion into northern Finland. The war also had internal struggles, with Sigismund Vasa briefly being king of both Poland and Sweden until being deposed by his nephew King Charles.
Damn, so back in the days, you see how tight y'all motherfuckers were back then? There used to be one king for Sweden and Poland at the same time. Even before that, there was one king. That was that dude, you know what I mean? The king of the Danes, the Swedes, the,
were particularly harsh on the
Run that back.
The war also had internal struggles, with Sigismund Vasa briefly being king of both Poland and Sweden until being deposed by his nephew King Charles. The conflicts were particularly harsh on the people of Finland, who revolted against the Swedish crown during the Finnish Club War. This ended well for no one, least of all the Finns and the Sami. 17th century Finland found itself part of a dominant military power, and many Finns served in the Swedish army. The 1600s were pretty big in a religious war, and Sweden, devout Lutherans since 1527, couldn't help but get involved. Protestants were like the hipsters of Europe at this point, which is all fine and dandy unless those hipsters happen to control a large modernized army. The 30 Years' War and the Northern Wars had many Finns such as the Hakapolita die for the Swedish crown.
30 Years' War, that's a long war. New Zealand had one of the longest wars in history, 36 years. With the British, but, and the British tried to conquer my people. So the Maori had one of the longest wars in history, but 30 years is a long time, bro.
Crowns symbolically to protect their faith. But if they did happen to gain some land in the process, well, that was just an added benefit. Unusually cold temperatures and famine meant the Finns weren't ready for the next conflict the Swedes would bring them to, the Great Northern War. Sweden had gone to war with literally all of its close neighbors, and the Finnish countryside was ravaged by freezing temperatures and the Russian army, killing nearly half of Finland's population.
Damn.
If you'd like to learn more about the Great Northern War, why not head over to the Great Courses Plus. The Great Courses Plus is an on-demand video service with thousands of lectures and courses from all around the world. More. For whatever interests. Lecture 22 in the Decisive Battles is a fun...
We're skipping this.
Last Sweeney. After that, and the Great Courses Plus for their support. Finland was mostly at peace after that, and may have been a disputed kingdom for a while. It's complicated. The Finns more earnestly began to struggle for independence during the period of Enlightenment. When the Napoleonic Wars rolled around, Sweden, just like all the cool kids, went to war with France. And somewhere in the middle of it, Russia annexed Finland. How this...
Just like all the other cool kids, Sweden went to war with France.
During the period of Enlightenment. When the Napoleonic Wars rolled around, Sweden, just like all the cool kids, went to war with France. And somewhere in the middle of it, Russia annexed Finland. How this happened is long and complicated, and we'll elaborate more when we do episodes on Sweden and Denmark. But long story short, the Russians wanted to push their border as far west from St. Petersburg as possible, and gave the Finns autonomy under the Grand Duchy of Finland to do it. Until World War I, the duchy remained peaceful and didn't serve under the Russian serfdom. By the time the 20th century dawned, the Finns were thoroughly infected by the new European fever, nationalism. In 1917, during the First World War, Finland gained independence, but just like pretty much all of its European neighbors at the time, it became split on ideological divides, in this case, conservatives and socialists. And ideological divides very rarely didn't lead to civil war in those days.
Damn.
The Finnish Civil War ensued and the capitalists won, but that wouldn't be the end of socialism or other ideologies in Finland. The Second World War saw a major conflict in Finland. 2 months after the fall of Warsaw, the Soviet army invaded Finland. This proxy conflict is labeled the Winter War since most...
There's been Jorge fucked them up. This has been on Jorge, the sniper went out there and smoked him all. Or what, diff? I did a reaction on him too. Go check that out, bro.
Most of the battles were fought in thick winter snow, making famous the Finnish ski troops, Molotov cocktails, and Simo Häyhä, the White Death.
Is that his name, Häyhä or Jorge? I don't know, but his name's Simo Jorge. Anyway, that's what I call him. White Death.
Häyhä was a Finnish marksman who had the highest confirmed kills more than any other sniper in history in America.
And he only used the iron sights, bro. The dude never used any scope or... Bro, come on.
Major war. The Soviets named him the White Death, since he blended into the snow and the men feared him to the point of paranoia. The Finns were loosely allied with Nazi Germany during their attacks on Russia, but only lasted until 1944 when the Finns went to war with Germany to expel them from the northern Lapland.
Yo, what?
Paranoia. The Finns were loosely allied with Nazi Germany during their attacks on Russia, but only lasted until 1944 when the Finns went to war with Germany to expel them from the northern Lapland. Harsh war reparations.
Only right at the end did y'all niggas switch up. Finland was Nazi Germany's ally right up until 1944. The war ended in 1945. Bruh. Did y'all niggas see that he was losing, and was it like, hey, yo, we better switch sides, bro? This ain't going too well.
Reparations were imposed on Finland in the post-war period by the USSR. However, this had a modernizing effect on the nation. They were largely optimistic after the war, having successfully defended their nation. Nationalism was high, and they remained free from absorption into the USSR, rather remaining a close trade ally, while strengthening its ties to Scandinavia as well. They were completely neutral during the Cold War and cooperated mostly with both sides. In 1952, they entered into the Nordic Union, with abrogations of passports, immigration, social welfare, and trade tariffs. Finland also shaped herself into the modern socialist welfare state it is today, with a government not unlike Sweden or Denmark. They joined the European Union in 1995 with Sweden and Austria, and 4 years later adopted the euro as their currency. The facilitation of trade and immigration.
Alright, so you used the euro? Alright, I wondered that.
And boosted the economy and tourism. The economy is based on manufacturing.
Because I know in Sweden they use the SEK and shit like that, you know what I mean? And, you know, Russia they use the ruble, things like that.
Service delivery and resource exports, and is highly ranked in information technology. Outsiders have frequently described Finland as a socialist utopia, which, while probably a little romanticized, they are currently ranked the 5th happiest country in the world. And who doesn't love happy reindeer?
Hey, that's dope, because we're third. We're the 3rd most happiest country in the world, so that's pretty dope. Hey, you in the top 5 with us, bro. That's cool.
Well,
this is a
we
cool
hope
video.
You enjoyed the Finland episode. If you want the chance to vote for the next country we cover, you can head on over to the Sweeney Patreon page.
I did enjoy that. I did enjoy that. You know what? I enjoyed this so much, I'm going to go find another one. I'm going to go find Sweden or Norway or something like that. You know what I mean? Sweden, Norway, one of those countries. Anyway, y'all know what up, bro. Run the numbers up on this video. Click up, squad up, tap, and whatever you want to call it. That was dope. I'm learning more and more through all this history stuff that we've been doing too, bro. So, yo, go check out the playlist that you see popping up. It should have all the history, all the geography, and all of that. So, yo, thanks for tapping in, bro. Stay safe, stay dangerous. We out. Peace.